We're in the middle of a 6-week series on the book of Daniel, the first 6 chapters of Daniel. And so we're calling it Stand Strong. I think this morning will be a good example of that. Let's just kind of put it in context just for a second. You might ask, if you're new here this morning, we just put it, where does it stand? I didn't grow up in a church. I've told you that many times. I didn't really know. You say Daniel, cool, it's in the Bible. I had no idea where it was in the Bible. But let me just give it a context. It's after Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. That was about 2000 BC. It's after Joseph when he goes to Canaan eventually, and Moses, they kind of together kind of bring him out of there. Joseph brought him there. Moses brought him out. That's about 1500 BC. It's after the kings of Saul, David, and Solomon. That's about 1000 BC. Then the divided kingdom, in which God then disciplines them because they're not walking with him. And about 600 BC, he sends them into captivity in Babylon, and that's where Daniel is. He is a Hebrew hanging out in Babylon because he was taken there as a slave and as a captive. And he begins to live out his life there in the midst of the courts, the higher levels of society there, because he proved, and a bunch of his friends proved, to be very capable. And God begins to use him there. Now, the book of Daniel is all about this. It's about the fact that God is sovereign over history and empires, and he both sets them up and removes them as he chooses. And he's somehow unfolding that in the world, so that all the kingdoms of the world will come to an end. In the last part of Daniel, we're going to see that all those kingdoms come to an end, and they'll be replaced by the Lord's kingdom that will never pass away. So the last half of the book is all about that apocalyptic end of world kinds of things and what God's going to do. Then chapters 1 through 5 that we were looking at, or 1 through 6, are the fact that Daniel and his 3 friends in the Babylonian court, and we're going to look at those 3 friends primarily today, as they live faithfully to the Lord while living in a culture that's diametrically opposed to what they're all about, living in a very difficult place and a system that is against them, but the result will be the blessing of the Gentiles. So it'll be really interesting. And really, this is really a theme that's apropos for today in our own lives. And so I think it's a really good thing to look at. So, like I said, though, chapters 7 through 12 are all about that apocalyptic ending of the world that is coming. And you can see the world kind of senses it, doesn't it? It feels like that there's something really ugly happening. And exactly when that's going to happen, I don't know for sure. But you begin to wonder, and even Hollywood's beginning to wonder, right? So many of the films today are all about that incredible end of the world and what's going on there. So, but let me just real quickly, chapter 1 was all about this. It was about your identity as the core issue of your life. And I don't know if I could say that strongly enough. It is so absolutely critical, your identity as to who you are. And in fact, between the ages of 0 and 20, that's kind of the primary thing that a young person is doing, is trying to figure out who they are and their identity. And when that's found, then they can move on to this place of growth. And when they go from growth, then they can go on to they go into a place of learning, and then into a place of growth, and then a place of great influence. But they got to know who they are first. And sometimes it's really hard, but that's what this is all about, your identity about who you are. And the convictions that you stand on, it becomes the expression of who you are, your convictions. And that the testimony begins to excel in the marketplace. And it's all about this, really. Let's go to the next one. It's who you be will determine what you do, and what you do proclaims what you believe, and what you believe will speak clearly to the world. That's what chapter 1 is all about. And then chapter 2, last week, we talked about the reality of Nebuchadnezzar, and his authority was based out of his own insecurity and fears, and it's just pathetic what he does, because that's what really poor leadership does. And then their faith, Daniel's faith, is grounded in the ability of God, not himself, and the fact that the ability of God is grounded in God himself because of who he is, and that God himself is the one worthy to honor. So that brings us to chapter 3. Okay, and here's what I'm going to call today. I'm going to call it the confrontation. I don't title chapters very often, but it's the confrontation. And it's really this, 6 stages of spiritual battle that we're going to see happen in this thing. So the confrontation. Now, this morning, there are 5 repetitive phrases that are used in this chapter for emphasis. So when you hear it over and over and over again, the author is trying to get something across to you. But this morning, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to ask you to be a little goofy this morning. I'm going to ask you to have a little bit of fun. And now, if you don't buy in, this is going to be a disaster, okay? So So to avoid me being totally embarrassed, I'm going to need you to buy in. So kind of loosen yourself up on the inside and on the outside, because I'm going to ask you to get involved as we read this passage, because there are certain repetitive phrases. So the first one is this. The first repetitive phrase is going to be King Nebuchadnezzar. So either the King Nebuchadnezzar or the word Nebuchadnezzar is going to be used 14 times, okay? And so it just gets old after a while. But instead of saying King Nebuchadnezzar when we get there, I want the whole group to read it, and I want you to use Big Nebo. Okay, we're going to call him Big Nebo. Because Nebuchadnezzar gets his name from the god Nebo. And the god of Nebo was the god of writing, the god of intelligence, the god of power, that the Babylonians, and so he took his name from that. And so we're going to call him Big Nebo. So if you see King Nebuchadnezzar, don't read it. I want you to all together say, Big Nebo. Okay, let's try it one more time. Big Nebo. Yeah, right on. Okay, so you got it. Now, the next thing that we're going to find 4 times in this is a list. It's called the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the kingdom. So he's going to call all these guys together, and there's like all the government officials from the big, like the governor, the lieutenant governor, the county commissioners, the treasurers, all the guys in power. He's going to ask them to come to this certain thing. So instead of reading that whole list every time, we're just going to call them the officials. Ready? So we'll just call them the officials. Thank you. You guys are great. Okay, now next, there's going to be 3 times where it's going to list a bunch of instruments. Because there's going to be the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every other kind of music. So there's just going to be all these instruments. And then when he says all these other kinds, they're going to bring every instrument they had into this orchestra that's going to begin to play. So instead of reading this whole list, we're going to call it the orchestra, okay? So when we get there, just say the orchestra. Thank you, okay. Then there are going to be 8 times this term, the burning fiery furnace. Because this is going to be the story of when these 3 guys get thrown in a furnace, okay? So when it comes to the place of the burning fiery furnace, what we're going to say is this. We're going to say, burning fiery furnace. I couldn't figure out a better word for it, okay? So let's do that. That's going to be the burning fiery furnace. Okay, good. Then, for 13 times, it's going to use the names of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, okay? And I think the best way to maybe refer to them is going to be the 3 amigos. The 3 amigos. And I was going to show a clip of 3 amigos today, but none of them were appropriate for church. Especially the plethora. If you guys remember okay, you guys don't remember the movie, but it's going to be the 3 amigos. So when we get to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it's going to be the 3 amigos. Yeah, okay. Now, you guys, the better you get at this, the better this is going to go, okay? But we're going to use those as we read it. Okay, good. Well, let's get on with it then. The first 7 chapters I'm going to call the confirmation. In this midst of the confrontation, it's going to be the confirmation. In other words, the request to be conformed. It's the first step of spiritual battle. It's the request to be conformed. So let's start with this. Okay, you guys ready? Verse 1. No. What do you mean, King Nebuchadnezzar? It's Big Nebo. Okay, Big Nebo. Okay, now, you guys, in chapter 2, remember he had a vision of this huge statue, and the top of it would be the head, and it was going to be gold. The shoulders were going to be silver, the middle section bronze, the bottom section iron, and at the bottom would be feet made of iron and clay put together. Different kingdoms that were going to succeed one another, from the Babylonian Empire to the Persian Empire to the Greek Empire to the Roman Empire, and then some sort of set of 10 empires or nations after that. But here we're going to find Big Nebo. He's going to make a statue of all gold. It's all himself. It's all about him. Okay, so he made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits. That's 90 feet. That's big. It's tall. It's not as big as the arch, but it's really tall. So it's going to be 90 feet tall, and whose breadth is 6 cubits. That's 10 feet. So it's 10 feet by 90 feet tall. It's this huge golden image. Now, it probably wasn't solid gold. There probably was not enough gold in Babylon to make that solid gold. It was probably gold covered, gold leaf. But it's still very expensive. It's still very huge. And they pounded gold onto the side of it. And he set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon, out in the middle where everybody could see it. Okay, and it's this huge image. And then verse 2, he says, then, you guys are great, sent to gather, oh, you guys are awesome, to come to the dedication of the image that had set up. Okay, he called them all to come to the dedication. Wow, it's incredible. Now look at verse 3. Then the great of the province gathered for the dedication of the image that had set up. And they stood before the image that had set up. And they all stood there. And the herald, the one who would speak for them, in a sense, he's the guy who stood up and said, okay, glad you're here. And everything's going on. He says this. He proclaims out loud in a very loud voice. He says, you are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the orchestra, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that had set up. Well, you guys are great. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be immediately cast into the burning fiery furnace. Right on. Okay, and therefore, as soon as all the people heard the sound of the orchestra, all the people and nations and language fell down and worshiped the golden image of the king that the king had set up. So he says, conform to this. Do this. And if you don't, I'm going to throw you in the burning fiery furnace. Incredible amount of pressure, right? I mean, he was serious about this. And so he says, you have to worship this thing that I have developed. And he's going to make it a big hullabaloo, right? He's got an orchestra going. He's going to call the people there. All the leaders are there. And he's saying, you better do this under threat of your life to conform. Wow, it's pretty incredible. And it was very real, is what's going on there. Now, in verse 8, we're going to enter into a whole new section. I'm going to call it the accusation. The accusation. They're going to be accused. Because look at this in verse 8. It says, therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans, these were the kind of the major leaders of their culture, came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared to, O king, live forever. What a kiss up. What a kiss up. You know, and so he says, O king, live forever. O king, you have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning fiery furnace. Okay. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon. Okay. And these men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. He's going to accuse them. See, these guys will not be conformed to what you've called. And King Nebo, Big Nebo, you are the stud, right? You are the one. You are everything. Oh, King, live forever, King Nebo, because you are the one that every one of us should fear. But these three guys, he says, there are certain people who aren't doing it. They're putting it in your face, Big Nebo. Hey, they're totally slighting you. His ego, do you feel it growing already? He's like, what do you mean they're not doing it? And they get accused. They get said they're out of line. They're not in step with the rest of us. They're not honoring you for who you say you are. And they're accused of being the rebel rousers, the problem people, whatever. Well, it's going to go from that. Now they're accused, but they're going to confirm where they stand. It comes to the confirmation, if you will, in verses 13 through 18. Look at this. Verse 13, then, okay, in furious rage. Let's just stop there for a second. His response to them not worshiping him was this furious rage. Commanded that be brought. So they brought these men before the king and answered and said to them, is it true, O, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Is this true? Look at this in verse 15. Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the to fall down and worship the image that I've made, well and good. He's given him a second chance. He goes, is this true? Hey, you guys, if it's true, I'm sure it's a mistake, right? Hey, I'll give you another chance. Hey, orchestra leader, hit it. Go for it. And you just need to fall down. Fall down and worship. It's not a big deal. You know what? I'm sure you made a mistake. And so, ready, maestro? Hit it. And they're like, nope, not doing it. It's amazing, isn't it? He says, all well, good. All will be forgiven. If you just do it now, we'll let it go. No big deal. We'll just let it go. He says, but if you do not worship, you shall be immediately cast into the and who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? Man, did you hear that? Because here's the reality is what he's saying. I am your God. That's what he's saying. This image, it's his authority. And he's saying, don't you dare violate my authority because I am your God. That's what he's saying to them. And if you violate that, I'll have you done away with so fast it'll make your head swim. I am your God, he says to them. Wow. Look at verse 16. Okay, one more time. Oh, you guys are great. Answered and said to the king, oh. Now, you guys, if we get to heaven and Nebuchadnezzar's there, and you call him Big Nebo, I think it's going to be great. Okay, so I don't know exactly how it goes in heaven, but I think we're going to get to interact. And so I think he might be there after kind of what we see in the story. And he's just going to say, yo, Big Nebo. And he'll go, oh, God, you guys are from Quest, aren't you? And and the three amigos, when you go up to them and say, hey, three amigos, if you do it with an accent, it'll be awesome. And they'll go, oh, my gosh, the Questers are back, okay? It'll be really good. Okay, so let's go back. Oh, Big Nebo, we have no need to answer you in this matter. I don't even need to answer you. I love that part. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand. Wow. He didn't even need to answer him with this. I'm sure they didn't even yell this. They say, hey, look, here's the deal. I don't need to answer you. If you're going to make this happen, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from all of this. And he'll deliver us from your hand, no matter what. I think the confidence of these young, either late teens or early 20s guys who had said, man, this is where I stand. And it doesn't really matter what you do. I don't even have to answer you. My God is a big God. And he'll deliver me. And then look at verse 18. But if not, let's say he doesn't deliver us from the fiery furnace. Be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you've set up. I think God will deliver us. But even if he doesn't, it doesn't matter. I'm not worshiping your God. I'm not going there. I'm not doing it. It's just a golden image. And really all it is an image of you. And you are not my God. I'll not do it. Period. Wow. That's an incredible thought. Let me ask you, where's that kind of confidence come from? Where's it come from? Well, I don't know. It doesn't tell us exactly. But I wonder if some of it comes from a place, maybe even having spent time in Psalms 118. Maybe he spent time looking at God's word, maybe singing the songs of Israel, which are all in the Psalms. And look at this, in Psalm 118, I wonder, you can almost hear the three amigos reading this and buying this, right? The three amigos, it says, oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. Through all of it, through us being deported, through us going through the challenges of eating not the king's food, but our own, through the challenges of interpreting a dream, along with Daniel, that threatened our lives. And in this, I'm telling you this, he's saying to them, we believe that what God has wrote is true, that his steadfast love endures forever, no matter what. Let Israel say, his steadfast love endures forever. Let the house of Aaron say, his steadfast love endures forever. Let those who fear the Lord say, his steadfast love endures forever. Look at verse 5. Out of my distress I called on the Lord, and the Lord answered me and set me free. I wondered if they sat there and said, hey, Lord, this is a little bit stressful. He's telling us he's going to kill us. This feels like a little bit of stress. He said, out of my distress I called upon the Lord, and the Lord answered me and set me free. The Lord is on my side, I will not fear. What can man do to me, really? Wow, that's pretty incredible, isn't it? The Lord is on my side as my helper. I shall look in triumph on those who hate me. Wow. I'm sure they stood there and said, Big Nebo, you got nothing on me. You want to kill me? Kill me. Now, you guys, it's not that we look forward to anything like that, right? I mean, we don't. But what can they take? Only your body, not your soul. And I think that's where these guys stood. They're standing there. Wow. Well, after that, after they confirmed where they stood, they were met with contemption. Now, just so you know, that's not really a word. Contempt is, but I needed an I-O-N on the end of it. So it's called contemption. So we'll change it. Yeah, okay, we'll just change it to contempt. The contempt that happened. Because we'd want it to say, when they stood strong, right? We want to say, then Nebuchadnezzar would say, oh, wow, it's incredible. Of course. That's not what happened. Look at this in verse 19. Then was filled with fury, and the expression on his face was changed. You ever seen that? You've probably seen that. When people are so infuriated, so deep down, their face changes. It's a fearful thing to see, isn't it? It is an ugly, fearful, horrible, revengeful, furious look into people who are so threatened by whatever's going on. It says that the expression on his face changed. And imagine it turned to this pure evil. And it changed against amigos. Oh, I love it. The three amigos. Okay, we got an accent going. I love it. Okay, he ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it usually was heated. So this furnace was hot. I mean, it was going to burn anything. And he's like so mad that he says, heat it up more. More. Not enough, do it more. 7 times hotter than it was supposed to be. Verse 20, and he ordered some of the mighty men of the army to bind and to cast them into the... And those men were bound in their cloaks and tunics and hats and their garments, and they were thrown into the... I mean, he was going to get rid of them big time, right? I mean, he's like, leave everything on, put their hats on, put every cloak on them, wrap them up. I mean, we are going to really do them in here. He is so angry that they wouldn't bow and worship him. He just couldn't stand it. Look in verse 22. Because the king's orders were urgent and the furnace overheated, the flames of the fire killed the men who took up. I mean, it just throwing them in, guys died. You know, how out of control do you feel Nebuchadnezzar? The damage he is willing to inflict on all sorts of people because of his anger, his arrogance as to himself. And there are guys who get killed just throwing in the 3 amigos. And it says, and these 3 men fell bound into the fire. Okay, good. Thank you, guys. All right. So it's amazing the contempt that Nebuchadnezzar had towards these people. Did you feel it? The contempt, the shame he wants to put on them. Says, how dare you not worship me? How dare you violate my authority? How dare you do that? Wow. Well, the contempt is followed with a transformation. Look at this in verse 24. Then, Big Nebo was astounded and astonished and rose up in haste. And he declared to his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? And they answered, true, O king. That's exactly what we did. The 3 of them went in, and then all those other guys got killed. He probably didn't say that part, but that's what happened. And then he answered and said, but I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they're not hurt. And the appearance of the fourth is like the son of the gods. What's the deal? Didn't we just put 3 in there? And he goes, no, there's 4. And that one over there looks different. He looks like the son of the gods. How confusing, how unbelievable would that be to him? Now, we'll see here in a minute who they affirm this to be or suggest that this would be. We don't really actually know who it is. It doesn't tell us exactly. Here in a minute, it's going to say that that's an angel. And very well probably was. Some would suggest it's a pre-incarnate Christ who met him there. It doesn't tell us exactly for sure. But it was someone supernatural that met these guys in the fire in the furnace. It's an incredible story. And maybe a nice Bible story, right? I believe it to be true. It's actually what happened. There's this incredible thing that happened. Look in verse 26. Then came near to the door of the and he declared, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then came out of the fire. All of a sudden, you can see the change starting to happen in Nebuchadnezzar. Big Nebo is starting to go, okay, something's going on here. He'd already seen it gone on with Daniel interpreting the dream, right? And he says, this is a God of gods. This is a Lord of kings. But he forgot. He kind of forgot it. And he went back to building this huge 90-foot statue of himself and asked people to worship him. And when they wouldn't, he's so angry. And he's so contemptuous. But something's going on here. Now he says, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. And then, oh, yes, I'm sorry. I was a line behind you. I'm still with the amigos. Okay, so 27. And gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of these men, and the hair on their heads was not singed, their clothes were not harmed, and no smell of fire came upon them. I think that's the most miraculous part of it. Have you ever been around a fire for like 2 minutes, and your clothes absolutely smell like fire? You know, here, even their clothes didn't smell like it. Wow. Because, look at verse 28. Answered and said, blessed be the God of... This is what I love. Not just the living God. He understood that this living God lived in them. The God of these 3 guys. He understood it. He saw it. He connected these 3 with that God. That's, I think, really incredible. Your God, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Chevy Chase, Martin Short, and Steve Martin. Who could mean Steve Martin? Your God. It's the God of you guys. I get it. Now look at this, and it kind of lists what he does. Who sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him. Wow, they really identify their trust in God. Who had set aside the king's command. I said, we're not obeying that. Do what you need. And who yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any God except their own God. Wow. That God I recognize. Wow. And as a result, what happens, not only did we find here that there's a transformation in his heart, but there's a promotion. Look what happens in verses 29 and 30. Therefore I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of the shall be torn limb from limb and their houses laid to ruin, and there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way. I have to stop there for a second. There is no other God who can do that. There's no other God. And then in verse 30, then the king promoted in the province of Babylon. He gave him a raise. But he said, there's no other God who's able to rescue in this way. So let me just ask you to picture, where are you at today that you need to be saved? You need somebody to do something. And there's no other God who can save in this way. That God wants to enter into that place in your life, in my life. And I have things, you guys. I mean, it's like we all do, I think, right? I mean, I'm assuming we all do. If we interviewed each other this morning, you'd say, okay, life's good, but it's not great. It's not perfect. There's stuff. is God's arm long enough and strong enough to reach to that place in our lives? Well, let me just do this. Can I make a summary statement, kind of try to pull all this together, and then see if I can apply it here quickly. The summary statement, I'd like to read it. Here it is. In this world, we will be asked to conform to the norms of the culture around us. And if we don't, we will be accused of violating something, right? If you're not willing to conform to this culture, you will be accused of something, all sorts of different things. But if we confirm our stance, we will face contempt. But if we stand strong, that there will be some who will be transformed by the truth and the grace of God, who will be promoted and glorified by some of the very ones who at one point were antagonistic. It's the pattern of what happens. It's happening in our culture today. And I think we have to understand that's the way it's going to go. And it's not just going to be easy. But we will meet being accused, and we will meet being treated with contempt. But there is a powerful God who is the only one who is able to do it. So let me just kind of do this. Let's ask, so therefore, what now? Let me just put it in a form of questions, okay? First of all, in what ways are we tempted to conform to the norms of the culture around us? In what ways are you? In what ways am I tempted to be conformed to the culture around me in opposition to what God wants for me? There's a million of them. Young people, you face such pressures, it stuns me to conform to a culture that will really, at the end of the day, want to chew you up and spit you out in such incredibly powerful and painful ways. In what ways are we tempted to be conformed to the culture? What ways are you? Second question. Are you ready to be accused of violating something? Just like the three amigos were accused of not worshiping God, the God that Nebuchadnezzar says he was. And they were accused of being seditionists, rebel rousers, problem makers. Are you ready to be accused? Because you'll be accused if you don't conform. Third, are you committed to confirming your stance? To say, the steadfast love of the Lord endures forever. I trust him. I'm going to trust him with my life. I'm going to say no to what I need to say no to. And I'm going to stand with him. Are you ready to confirm that? Next question. Are you prepared to face the contempt that will surely come your way? Because there will be contempt. People will hold you in contempt. Are you ready for that? Like these three guys. But here's the incredible thing. The next question. Do you trust that by standing strong that there will be some who will be transformed by the truth and the grace of God? Because when he said, the God of the three amigos, as you stand, there are going to be people who reach the dead ends of life. You know what I mean? The dead ends where there's no place to go, there's no more hope, there's no nothing. And when they turn, if there's a place of gracious love and acceptance to be able to meet the living God, that they'll be transformed in his truth and in his grace that's offered. Are we willing to trust him for that? Not knowing the timing of it, not knowing whether it be our own family members, or people on our block, or people in our neighborhood, or people at work that seem to be headed exactly the opposite direction. Are we willing to stand strong so that they can be transformed when they come to a place of need? Wow. I think that's what he's calling us to. And last but not least, can we envision that there will be some who at one point who are antagonistic that will come to be the very ones who will promote the beauty of who God wants to be in and through us all? Some of the greatest skeptics will become of the greatest promoters of the amazing love of God. Are we willing to believe that? And that God will raise up people and say, I've been down all those dead-end roads and none of them worked. But the only God who saves is this one. This is the guy, the God of the three amigos. That's the one. The God of the people of Quest Not because Quest is so great, because we're not. We're going to be kind of a weird group of people. But the God of the Quest is the God that I want to know. Are we willing to do that? So as the band comes up, those are some tough questions. These are some tough deals. Interesting here in the book of Daniel, Daniel's not mentioned one time, right? He didn't even show up. He didn't even come. I don't know where he is. He's on vacation, or he's doing something else, or he wasn't required to come to the meetings, whatever it might be. Because he wasn't going to bow down to this big Nebo, right? He wasn't going to do it. So we don't know where he was exactly. Or maybe he was so influential, they didn't even call him on the carpet. They said, well, let's let Daniel do whatever he wants. But his three buddies here, the three amigos, we're going to get them. And these guys stood up, and they lived in the midst of it with strength and with courage and with conviction and with kindness and with prudence, and they lived it out. It was amazing what happened. This is the pattern of spiritual battle in our own lives. It is that pattern of the things that go on, that we're asked to conform, we're accused when we don't, we stand firm in the midst of it, but we'll be met with contempt. But there's a transformation process that God wants to do, and he will be promoted as the God of all the universe. And are we willing to worship him and stand for him and to love people deeply and to love him with all of our heart, to trust his word, to embrace it in our lives, to be able to respond that the loving kindness of the Lord endures forever, better than anything else. So this morning, as we respond, I want this to be a place where you say, okay, where am I going to stand? What am I raising my hand for? What am I giving my life to? Maybe for some of you, it's kind of just a decision again. Like say, yeah, that's where I've been, that's where I am, and that's where I want to continue to be. For others of you, maybe you've been kind of on a trip for a while. Maybe you've been away from the Lord. And you say, you know what, all those dead ends haven't come to anything. I want to walk with him. Or maybe for some of you, it's the very first time. You've never made a decision like that in your whole life. And you say, today's the day I want to do that. And if you're still sitting there and you're thinking, I'm not sure yet, that's okay. Then you just hang in there and keep working it through. See what God does. Because God is a God of incredible patience. And he will call you and draw you over a period of time to himself. And you may be in the midst of that. I don't know where you're at, but let God do whatever it is. So let's pray. Father, I pray for all of us that somehow the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, our three amigos, that what we could see in their lives, that we would live it out. Father, I think we live in a culture much like theirs. It's exactly like theirs. But Father, I pray that you would make us like them. Give us hearts like them. Because you are a God whose love endures forever. To every corner of the universe, to every moment of our lives, that's where you reach. And we are grateful for it, and we give you ourselves.